think bigger. We can do hard things. We must challenge ourselves. I've been in so many rooms where mediocre men have pitched lame ideas and got $10 million just like that without, proper traction. And there's systemic issues that come from that, but it's also they had been successful in selling that big dream.
Welcome to the Jasmine Star Show, a place where we talk about business. And today we get to mix that with empowerment. We get to mix that with philanthropy. And we get to mix that with an incredible woman who is changing the face of investing, family offices, and just a powerhouse. I could not be more excited to introduce you to Sarah Chen-Spellings. Sarah, thank you to the Jasmine Star Show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Jasmine, I always say this. I meet certain people where I feel like our frequency matches.
Okay, let's start there.
And I'm just compelled to reach out and I don't know, do things together. I feel like magic's going to happen somehow.
We are new friends, but as people from the podcast know, I don't bring people on the podcast without knowing them personally. I don't do the book tours. I don't have conversations to have conversations. It has to be, this person has to be in direct alignment. So let's chat about how we met. Now, there's two perspectives. There's your perspective and my perspective. So let's start there. How did we meet from your perspective?
From my perspective?
Yeah.
Well, I am the silent stalker on Instagram of great women. It is my hobby to find exceptional women doing exceptional things.
I didn't know we were starting there. Okay.
And I've been following your journey, your personal journey, because I'm new to America and I wanted to find great women doing great things and what's she up to, what's she like. And
interesting.
Building my network that way and sort of building that algorithm of great women because I think social media can be a positive place if we build it intentionally. And I know you believe in intentionality. So it started with that. And then, Create and Cultivate is a group that I support. Jacqueline Johnson and Marina Middleton are building something amazing. And with the work that I'm doing at Beyond the Billion, of course, female founders are the beneficiaries that we are driving, fueling women-led innovation. So their community is very important to us. And when I saw that you were keynoting, I was super excited. But I didn't reach out. And then you DM'd me. And I was like, wow,
okay. I have to pause. I have to pause.
Saying something here.
Okay. So you're making references to Create and Cultivate and Jacqueline Johnson and Maria Middleton. Okay, so we're going to pause. So if people are not familiar, Create and Cultivate is a female-led and driven conference to empower business owners. And I was invited to speak during South by Southwest. And so after my keynote, I'm behind stage and I am introduced and we start talking and we had connected ever so briefly. Now, before I went through and I was looking at who's speaking and how we start connecting, and I just sent DMs to people. Some people responded, some people did not. So the fact that we were behind stage and then within the first 5 minutes, I thought to myself, you are lightning in a bottle. And we had a very short conversation, but in that short conversation, you broke down female funding, female founders, investment, family offices, what type of debt female founders should be getting. And I'm sitting here and I literally stopped you and I said, I am so sorry. We just met. I need you on my podcast. And I said, whenever you're in LA. And then lo and behold, you say, what are you doing on March 27th? Can you be in New York City? To which I replied, I'm not sure what I'm doing on the 27th. And you said that you are co-hosting an event with the Gloria Steinem Foundation at Gloria's house, along with Olivella. And all I knew was I had to be in New York and I had to have you on the podcast, and everything works for us. And so I want to say thank you for being here. I want the audience to know that I wanted you on this podcast because there's very specific reasons. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart because I think that you are absolutely going to change and empower so many lives through this conversation. So thank you.
Oh, I appreciate it. I'm excited to do the work.
Okay.
Now that we're setting the bar high.
That's right. Okay. So let's give a little bit of context. I really want to break down what you do, what you're most known for, and then I want to contextualize it for most of the listeners because last night I had the opportunity to hear you speak from a lot of different perspectives. So before we talk about the work that you're doing with Beyond the Billions and how many unicorns you have in your portfolio, because all of that is bragworthy. But there was a story that you shared yesterday that I thought would really set the groundwork, that you had said you are from Malaysia, a small town, not even in a major city, and your mom had aspirations of being a secretary. Can you pick up that story there for us? Because I think it really sets the stage for who you've become.
Yeah, so Jasmine, just two very quick corrections. Beyond the billion without the S.
Okay.
That's important from a branding perspective.
Yeah,
You know what's up.
thank you.
You know
Thank
what's up.
you. Thank you.
And I wasn't from a small town. It was my mother that was from a small town.
it.
So I'm from the capital,
Okay.
Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia.
Okay.
And I think the suburbia in me continues. So I did grow up in a little bit of a nice suburb of Malaysia in Damansara. So I guess, starting with my mother, because I think, I've started to realize so much of our lives don't begin the moment we're born. It's actually generational. So you talk about it, and it's the good and the bad, right? Good being, the hidden dreams, the bad being generational trauma. And I think I've only come to understand and take full perspective of that in my recent years in my adulthood. But my mother has been a huge role model for me. As mentioned yesterday, she started in Batu Pahat, which is a small town south of Malaysia. And her biggest dream, because she was one of 9 children, the last of 9 children, imagine the generation before me. And her biggest dream was to be a secretary. I mean, she didn't really go to university, and picked up her bags, took the leap of entrepreneurship. I genuinely still today believe that immigration is the biggest form of entrepreneurship there ever is. And my mother did that in Malaysia, but still that's a big leap of faith, where she had no one else but her brother to support her and encourage her. And she really just started from ground zero, built herself. And within, her career, it was promotions, it was challenges all along the way. I was with her because I mentioned this yesterday. Asian style, we talk about our issues as a family at the dinner table. That's where things are solved over food. There's always an element of food being comforting, but it's also a good way to bridge the conversation. And at the end of her career, she was CEO of a Japanese automotive company and ultimately a holding company that owned Volvo, Daihatsu, Volkswagen, and a couple of other brands as well. And, I saw, frankly, my father being an amazing partner and co-parent in every single way and supported her. She will always attribute my father encouraging her, saying, okay, now I'm the general manager. I think I'm happy. This is my mom speaking. And my dad would say, well, what's next? Why not go for it? And she did, and she did, and she did again and again. So one step forward ahead of her time. And, just some context for your listeners, the Japanese culture expects women to be a little bit more submissive, I'll put it that way. We're not expected to lead. She has had instances herself where she was the boss attending the meeting, and I was told this. She was asked to make coffee. And she said, well, you're meeting me. You can make your own coffee. Thank you very much. And so I've experienced female leadership without realizing that it's different growing up. And so I had an interesting microcosm of the world early on, and that shaped me to who I am today. Absolutely.
Speaking of who you are today, I want you to talk more about Beyond the Billion, but then to also let the audience know, to put this in context, to see a strong father and a strong mother working together, and always him asking her, so what's next? And so then I intersect, and I know a little bit about your story. You're cutting millions of dollars of checks in your 20s, right? So this is a little bit unexpected. You are far ahead and above of many people your age. How did you get there? And then what was the thesis for what you're building today?
As a young person, I was in a cog in a wheel, obviously getting started at the lowest level. But very quickly, I was ambitious. My ambition was always something within me. And I looked around and I was asking my friends, hey, who is someone here that's a senior vice president or someone of some sort of like huge P&L in the company that's young, not in their 60s? Because a lot of the version of leadership in Malaysia back then looked older, of a certain gender, of a certain, skin color even, I'll say that. And so I looked around, and the youngest person then was Azli Razali. He was 42, I think at that time, 40-something. Anyway, he was one of the youngest. And I reached out to him like a DM, but an internal company DM for coffee. with the one intention of gaining inspiration. Like, how did you build your career in this humongous company? It was 13 billion market cap at that time. We were in, I think, 30 countries at that point in time, and shape your career. I want to be you, basically. And I entered his office. We had a couple of, quick conversations, and he realized I did law as a degree. And very quickly, I could see the gears moving in his mind, and he very quickly turned it into an interview. He asked me this question: hey, if you don't mind, tell me, how many ping pong balls can you fit in a Boeing 747? And then I knew, because I've studied business cases before, it's a typical MBA question where they're looking not for the answer, but how you get to that answer. And I answered it in a way that was satisfactory, I suppose, because the next thing I knew, he said, all right, tomorrow you report to me. I'll sort out the paperwork. We're starting a corporate venture capital unit. Nothing's really been done yet. We have a strategy paper. We're getting approvals. But because you have a legal degree, that you're going to be helpful in the team. So by then I was hire number 3 or number 5.
Wait, hold on. I have to go back, Sarah.
Yes.
How did you answer the question? Do you remember? How did you?
Well,
do we fill the Boeing?
How do we? Yeah. So I'll give the formula. The concept of it is, you think about a ping pong ball. It's a sphere, right?
Yes.
So you look at the total volume of that ping pong ball, and you sort of break down a Boeing 747 as a cylinder. And then you sort of calculate that,
A sphere with how many spheres within cylinders?
Correct.
Oh, wow.
How many spheres can fit into a cylinder? And then you make sure you cover like the top as well. Are we including? So you ask smart questions like, are you including the cockpit? Is there anything else, any other information I should know? So it showcases your qualities. Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're starting this new venture arm, and
Yes.
he has unexpectedly, to your surprise and probably his,
Yes.
brings you on that team because you're going to be useful.
Yes.
And how long are you there? And then how does that get to the next?
So I am there for quite some time, actually. I want to say close to 5 years in the company. And then I think we were doing it for about 3 years.
And one of the things that I remember you saying yesterday was you were often the only woman in the room.
Right.
So how does that shape where you are now and why you're so passionate on the other side of it?
What I realized was that I was put in a position that was super unique. I was hired number 3 and number 5, right, of this 100 million and then 150 million unit. And because we were so small and nimble, and I was the only one with a law degree, I was sent to all the legal meetings. And because I was so young, I was probably not qualified to be there, negotiating with our head of legal that was, this woman who's super, super sharp, and she's done the work. She's got the credibility. But, my boss is like, you take the meeting. Like, you're supposed to just report back to me, which was maybe a little bit irresponsible on his part. There was some politics there, but it gave me a huge opportunity. And in these rooms where I was negotiating term sheets and working with the entrepreneurs, what got me here was I realized we were cutting like $30 million checks. And all the deals that I was looking at in diligence did not have a single woman on the management team. And again, this was not like once, twice. It happened like, we were looking at multiple deals to make that one check. You have a huge funnel. And I was like, where are the women? And anytime I would negotiate, yes, there would be women, that were in supporting roles, but I was hungry for women that were carrying P&Ls, that were leading the innovations that we would invest in. And I just did not see them. And I looked around me, and this really piqued my interest. And I looked around even within my company in terms of women holding P&L. There were very, very few and far between. And that eventually led me to become an accidental activated feminist, I suppose, because I've always been a feminist. But I looked around me, and I was talking with some of my peers that didn't work in the company. Like, what's the situation in your company? Are there women at the top? And they're like, hardly. CEO's a guy. Like, all the top C-level positions are filled by men. You might have finance, legal by women, but driving businesses, driving growth in a way that I wanted to see myself in, hardly any. And then we looked at the stats, and it was, at that time in Malaysia, only 5% of CEOs in Malaysia were women. So go figure, of course we're not seeing them. And we asked the bigger question, where are the women? And could I see myself in this for the future? And that question led me to actually being a co-founder of what is now Lean in Malaysia. And it brings Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In brand, which I know has mixed connotations for different people here in America. But what I'll say is, the way it was implemented in Asia, because I was then instrumental in shaping a lot of the circles in Asia, it helped us think about leadership and women taking a seat at the table, taking up space and empowering each other, leaning into each other to want more for ourselves. And so I had my corporate career where I was investing, trying to encourage more women in leadership in my realm of influence, which was not much at that time, because remember, I'm still in my 20s. And then, then building myself in Malaysia to be this advocate for female leadership, doing the work with policy, activations, community, all of that. So I had almost like that two things at once, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as I guess fate would have it, or God's design, whatever you believe, in 2016, 2017, as I was, coming to the US, visiting portfolio companies and all of that, I met my husband along the way. And we had to decide what next for our lives, and America was it. So this
you
was
met him here in the
yes.
United States.
So
how did you guys
was
meet? Just randomly, side note.
Random side note, because this is important. I do believe this should be part of the conversation, because choosing your partner is the biggest investment you'll make.
Absolutely.
And, this is by no means, we're not perfect people. My husband's not perfect, neither am I. But we met when I literally missed my flight. And I met him at the closest bar. Yeah.
Wow.
Took my number, exchanged my number. We exchanged numbers, and then we followed through and did long distance for a while.
So it was like immediate chemistry. If you guys are just meeting,
I have this kind of thing like this. So I genuinely believe in it. Like if it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
Oh my gosh.
So we had immediate chemistry. I had history with other long distance relationships, so I didn't have much hope. But I was like, all right, let's see. And this guy was pretty persistent. Michael was pretty persistent. And proposed to me within 9 months.
Okay.
And
so he is the reason that the catalyst to
he is the catalyst
to change.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
my trajectory.
Yeah,
I didn't really have America on my books at all. I didn't study here, so I didn't really have a network here. If anything, it would have been London, right? London would have been the natural choice, or Europe if I wanted to be out of the country.
Okay.
So
I think I remember recently on Instagram seeing like an anniversary post. You guys got married in Bali?
No, in Malaysia.
Malaysia, okay.
A wedding blessing in Malaysia by the beach.
Wedding
yes.
blessing. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm watching this, and so I put me in your shoes. You come to the States without a network, but a litany of experience. You've built out strong. You're multi-passionate. You have investing. You have a very big network of women in Malaysia, and you get to the States, and then what?
And then I have to hustle.
And so what does that like? Literally, what does that look like? Explain it to me like I'm 5.
I started with people I knew, and this is, a question people like to ask me is, what's one of your favorite investments or best investments? And one of it was a big failure from a dollar perspective, but from a relationship and trust perspective, it was my highest return. So my portfolio companies that we invested in, that was my starting point, right? Because I was always, look, I was not the final decision maker in my 20s. It was a board of really, smart people in my company. We had advisors, all of that. I was facilitating a lot of the work behind the scenes. But what I always held myself to was a very strong and high work ethic, strict work ethic. I try not to play the game too much. It's necessary in corporate, but I try not to do that. And I was truthful, and people appreciated that. So, if a deal went through, my portfolio companies knew that it was because Sarah pushed it through. Sarah worked on it. Sarah brought in the right people around the table. And yes, I was only in my 20s. I didn't feel like I had a lot of power because I wasn't the final decision maker. But people see through, authenticity. And because of that, even without my title and the checkbook of the public listed company, just as Sarah, people just wanted to help me. So I, sucked my ego up, asked for help. Who do you know? Who can I speak to? And of course, because this was a personal move, it wasn't strategic. It wasn't like, all right, I want to continue my career in venture capital. I got to go to Silicon Valley. I was in DC, right? The political capital. Yes, there's investing and all that, but it's more skewed to defense. It wasn't in the worlds I felt that I fit in. And so I networked like crazy, showed up, in different places. I had really good women who opened doors for me. And ultimately, I met my co-founder, Shelly Porges.
Let's go there. Like, that's where I want to.
Shelly Porges. Yeah. She became ultimately my co-founder for what started as the $1 Billion Fund for Women. And, I was starting out. I knew I wanted to continue in venture and investing. I knew I wanted to continue in female leadership, women leadership. And here she was over breakfast telling me what she was up to. And it was called the $1 Billion Fund for Women. My ears perk up. And I realized, women investing. I know something a little bit about that. Like, frankly, I was waiting for my green card at that time. Let me volunteer my time. Let me be free labor for you. Show you my value. Let's see where this goes.
I actually didn't know that part of the story. So $1 billion fund for women. And you say, despite my legal training, despite my experience, despite having navigated all of these other multi-million-dollar deals, I'm going to volunteer.
Because you have to start somewhere. And first of all, I wasn't legally allowed to work yet.
Oh, okay.
So I had the green card. That was an important part. But of course, I was setting myself up for the future. But I thought that because I had this mindset of I'll have my nonprofit. Usually you think about your life. Most women, I'll say, that's like your philanthropy, your stuff that you volunteer for. And then you have your cash cow, right? That's your revenue generating. Like, this is your career, blah, blah, blah. And so I had that kind of bifurcation thinking in my life. And
got it.
I thought the $1 Billion Fund for Women was something I would just volunteer for to get started.
And how do you become her co-founder?
Well, I sat down, and Shelly will say this. We sat down. I got really excited, and I said, okay, well, I know how to do this. Like, I've structured things. I'm really, I think my superpower is I can bring a big vision to life with military precision and execution. And I did that with the $1 Billion Fund for Women, where it was Shelly's idea because she came as a serial entrepreneur investor, similarly saw, women not getting funding. So let's talk about that, less than 2%, less than 3% in the last decade. We've not moved the dial in a big enough way. And so when I was talking about my background, we really connected on that, right? Okay. So that the frequency was right. And I said, well, let me help you. The next day, I had a website design. I had the framing. I designed the initial pledge, how it would look like as a capital campaign around the world. And because I had co-investors, I've done this work before, people have invested with me. I have some sort of credibility, in the world. I brought a lot of Asian investors, multi-billion funds to the table. And she just looked at me and she said, gosh, Sarah, you got to be my co-founder. So there were other women involved in the early, when you're baking an idea together. But ultimately, she saw just what I delivered. I don't just talk a big game, like I do the work. And I think that's so important. We realized the big idea could be working with investors, signaling to the market that, hey, wouldn't it be great to have $1 billion committed to women, signaling to the market that we all believe this is not charity, but this is an investment strategy with good returns. And so we set out.
I'm going to pause there.
Yes.
An investment strategy with good returns.
Yes.
It is not charity. And I just wanted to pause there and let that sink in, because there's sometimes conversations around what it looks like and what it feels. And so I was particularly struck by your story because no founder as a female wants charity.
Yeah.
No, every female founder simply wants the chance. Somebody had said yesterday, and I believe it was Gloria, and she had said, we are all given equal measure of talent, but we are not all given equal measure of opportunity. Yeah, and so I wanted just to pause there. And I want to pick up the story, but I want to be very clear. And that's a line of delineation. It is not charity. Yeah. This is an investment strategy with high returns. Okay. Yes. So you say $1 billion, this big, lofty, audacious goal is $1 billion. And so what happens?
And so this was back of the napkin, right? $1 billion, and just to give some sense of scale here, back then women were getting like 2.2 billion. So $1 billion, half of that we thought would be a noble goal. Maybe we'll achieve it in 10 years. Kid you not. This was like, I still have like the back of napkin initial design of how we would bring this to life. And so we set out on this mission. We start pounding the pavement, dialing for dollars, getting VCs to commit a dollar amount that they describe to be invested into women-founded companies. Now, we do not control that amount, so we're not money managers at this point in time, but it's a capital campaign, right? A pledge campaign to get them to do more. And we were off to the races very quickly. Within 9 months, we got to the $1 billion goal.
So you thought 10 years.
Yes.
And in 9 months, $1 billion.
So what really, triggered this whole thing was Shelley, through her friends, had an opportunity at the World Bank meeting in Bali in 2018 to present a big idea for gender equality. So this was the concept paper that we put together in front of institutional investors, right? So that was a trigger point for us to do something.
Great.
And we said, okay, by October, we met August, September, so it was not long. Let's see what we can do. Maybe 100 million. Maybe we'll come and be there and just announce the big idea, but we start with early commitments.
Okay.
We showed up, I believe it was more than 400 million at that point in time already when we arrived.
Wow.
So what we proved was that designed correctly, VCs definitely wanted to do the right thing. And the messaging was clear that the capital is out there to be allocated in the right way. So, of course, it still has to meet the mandate of the fund. It has to have all these profiles of returns, recurring revenues, potential, blah, blah, blah. But it was by taking that simple exercise into the firm, that's where the change, I believe, happened and the impact of our work. Because that meant if I have a multi-billion firm or even like a $50 million firm, I'll come. If you're my co-founder, we'll have to make this proper and have a discussion. All right, how much do you think we can do for women? What's in our pipeline?
That's right.
Are we having... So you start to ask the right questions in the way that they've not been asked before. And with that, we were on the roll. We started working with really, really big VCs who struggled with this, frankly, in terms of how do we get to the right pipeline? Mm-hmm. How do we measure? How do we make sure that we're also, doing the right thing by our limited partners, our investors, right? So the fiduciary responsibility, and I always argue that you are not achieving, your responsibility by excluding half the population. Mm. Like, as a fiduciary, it is your job to ensure you're maximizing your return and having a big enough sample set to review.
Okay, so now,
yes,
when you look at your portfolio,
mm-hmm.
and last night they had mentioned how many unicorns?
Yes. Okay,
so a unicorn is over $1 billion
mm-hmm.
evaluation. And so you begin this journey, and how many are in the portfolio now?
So this is a capital campaign still, right? So yes. The capital campaign, we did our first round of reporting. At that point in time, $1 billion pledge, there were about 86 funds that took the pledge. And from the first billion, 638 million of that was deployed into 795 companies, of which 14 emerged as unicorns. And now, of course, depending on frankly, the market, valuations go up and down. Yeah. But we, have 14 unicorns.
Huge.
Yeah.
Massive.
So, invested by our partner funds.
That is just such a testament to the quality of the work that you are doing. And I now want, as a flash fire away, there's a listener, a female founder right now, who probably isn't on the path to becoming a unicorn. And so there are business owners right now that are saying, okay, how do I set myself up? How am I in a smaller microcosm making money, getting funding? And so I put the question out on social media, and people are like, how do I best determine the type of funding that I should be taking in this stage of my business? So let's talk about a female-founded company. You live in the both of worlds of funding and founding. Mm-hmm. So can you bridge the gap for a female founder scaling to 8 figures? This is a totally different mindset from the people that you are actually serving, but you've been there, you've done that, and you've seen it many, many times. What are 3 key considerations that they should consider when it comes to the type of funding?
Yeah. So, I had this conversation on my podcast, $1 Billion Moves with Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank, right?
Okay. We love Robert. And we love Shark Tank.
We always ask, I asked him this question, and this is something that I ask myself often. What's the difference between $1 million business and $1 billion business? And it is drastically different. It is from the founding, driving reason that you're building the business that shapes whether it becomes $1 million business or $1 billion business. And both have value. And I'll say, right, we have lifestyle entrepreneurs where you just want a cash flowing, you want a cash cow that delivers your stable revenues to draw an income to pay for your lifestyle. And you don't want the additional pressure and stress of growing it to be sold to someone else. You actually want to do this for a long period of time. In that case, frankly, bootstrapping, so doing it your own way and keeping your equity. This is a very big topic because with venture, you give a lot of your company away, right? So I'm sure you've heard stories where they exited for a huge million or even hundreds of millions, but they are still having to work the next day because they didn't structure their equity properly and gave too much away. So coming back to the options, lifestyle entrepreneur, you can bootstrap it. You can get friends and family investment, so angel investing. That's, depending on, I've had friends that, I think Jacqueline Johnson, our common friend, said she started one of her first few angel checks at 10,000, right? So friends, and that would be friends, family, angels. Those are small checks that help you, get to the next level, but may not necessarily want you, or maybe you don't want to be that $1 billion business with a different expectation, that sort of thing. There's also debt, of course, right? Depending on your appetite, your risk appetite. A lot of female entrepreneurs take on working capital loans. A lot of entrepreneurs, I'll put it this way. A lot of entrepreneurs also look at working capital loans because maybe what you just need is inventory, right? And you just need that capital to get going. And therefore you need a loan. And when you do the math, it checks out that you're able to pay whatever that percentage debt is, right? And that's very important to think about. So you're not giving away equity. And this is, an important tool for you, right? All these things, I would say, yes, we think about funding is a big thing, but these are just tools for your business, right? So don't let it overshadow what you want to build. These are tools. So think about it, don't be caught up in the ego of, I need to be on the cover of TechCrunch raising X amount, because look, that also meant that you gave away a lot of your company.
That's right.
So working capital loans helps you, manage cash flow. If you need to have upfront buy-ins that you don't have the capital for at this point in time, but you can pay back once you make the sale, that works as well. Now, venture capital is something that works for companies that are scalable. And usually these are tech-based companies, because you think of Olivella, right? The brand that I'm wearing today, where we co-hosted with Gloria Steinem yesterday. They're a technology and marketing play, right? They don't own the inventory, actually. They're a platform which enables us to make purchases. And once you figure out the formula for your acquisition, right, making sure your cost of acquisition is low, you have the platform for scale where you're able to reach a large amount of people. And usually tech is that enabler, which enables tech and media, right? I'll say this. These are two big assets of our generation, where if you hit it right, it has that level of scale. Some businesses, which are more brick and mortar, you think of like Anne Mahlem's, right? Anne sold her company, Solidcore, for a good amount of money. I mean, she said she had $80 million wired to a bank account. So that's still a valid way of building your business. But hers was a brick and mortar business, which, yes, you can scale, but it's a little bit harder and takes a little bit more capital, right? So she'll talk about even her financing options, where she went to angels. So she had her first investor, I believe, from her nonprofit when she worked with him, put in some money, and then she had friends and family. And then what else did she do? She took on loans because she had to buy those equipment, the Pilates equipment. And then she had private equity, right? So along the way, did she really have venture in the traditional sense? I'm not sure. But typically, venture capital looks for scalable businesses that have that leverage. With a little bit of capital, you can scale, right? And from a founder's perspective, that means that what you're building looks very different. It means you're looking for efficiencies in your business where you can have that level, that platform to scale, which for more brick and mortar businesses, it's typically a little bit harder. And so venture capital funds often, it's not a black and white, shy away from that. Because now let's talk about the business of venture capital, right? How it works. It is a 2-20 model, which means it's a 2% money management fee So let's say tomorrow, Jasmine, you give me $100 million. I'll charge you 2% to pay my salary, to pay for my cost of the business and all of that. And then I make a couple of investments for you. You're my limited partner. And we sold, one of your companies within there that, you've also helped me build. We sold it for a 5x return. From that profit, I get 20%, you get 80%. That is the business of venture capital, right? And so what that means is I'm looking for the 5x return.
That's right.
Huge returns. And a lot of more, I want to say, brick and mortar businesses don't have that return profile, which technology plays do. And so that's where the bifurcation of types of capital occurs.
I love that.
And when you flip it to the mind of the founder, it's, okay. So I take a venture capital check. The expectation is I need to grow my company by 3x, by 5x in a short, condensed period of time. And there are a lot of businesses, which are still very good businesses, that just don't have that return profile because they're not built on leverage, right? So that leverage tool of media and technology.
That's right.
So that when you're thinking of the type of capital, I think it really boils down to what is your end goal, right? But why I'm so passionate about venture capital is because if this is what you want to do, you're capable of, and frankly, I'm encouraging so many of your listeners to think about this, and this is why I'm here, to think bigger, because we can do hard things. We need to manage our mental health. All of this, yes, it applies. But gosh, I've been in so many rooms where mediocre men have pitched lame ideas and got $10 million just like that without, proper traction. And there's systemic issues that come from that, but it's also they had been successful in selling that big dream, right? I don't know if you watch. Yes,
I think this is going to be a good way to really hone in the whole core and the thesis of this show. And the episode should be about how does one become better at selling their dream? Because the person who I'm listening to is, the person who I believe is listening right now is I want this female founder to hear and know that she can absolutely do a friends and family round. She can get small checks written to her. And once her LTV to CAC ratio is in place, she then has the option to say, how much equity do I want to hold on to right now? She could absolutely, if you have a low cost of acquisition and a very high LTV and you would like to pursue a bank, great, let's start there and then see what happens after that. But when she gets a place to scale, if there is a tech component that can come in there and she could put gasoline on an already great fire, how does she sell that idea? What are three things? This is a flash flyer, close this episode, let's bang it out. How do we get better at selling the dream to venture capital?
How do we get better at selling the dream to venture capitalists? So I think, first of all, it starts with you need to do the work, right? You need to show numbers, traction. Whatever you're selling out there, the numbers tell us a story, right? So you can have a lofty dream, but I think having that ability to showcase that this works and I'm the most suited to execute on this vision because I have a unique perspective. I've done this in my past life in this way, that way, and this is how I'm taking that into the vision that I have. Baking that vision, I think, is very important. That $1 billion vision, right? Oftentimes we as entrepreneurs, even myself, I catch myself, gosh, it's such a full day. We've got this back to back, and I'm caught in the minute. But you can't lose yourself in the minute and not execute on the big vision and continue to tell that vision to others and bring it to life.
I love that. Point two.
So point one is do the work. Traction numbers, right? Early numbers, whether that's a pilot, whatever, proving your thesis out that this works.
Love it.
Second is, of course, then telling the big story without losing the big narrative and being lost in the day-to-day, because that's important, right? And I think this is an exercise anyone can do today. 5 years from this, and not 10 years, because 10 years is too long for venture capital. 5 years, what do I see?
Good.
What are the numbers?
Good.
Right? Today, I don't know, I'm at $1 million. But next year, if you give me, all I need is like X amount to spend on, I don't know, performance, marketing, conversions, to bring this conversion around, to bring in a technology player, to invest in it. With this amount, I can definitely do, 3X that. And then the next year with this, I can do another 3X. So from 1 million, you're not selling me $1 million business
That's
anymore.
right.
You're like, all right,
That's right.
you've got loyalty in your customers. You've built community. You will return me this amount. I give you 100 million in a couple of years. I see an exit. And this is probably the third point. For venture capital, how we make money is we need to have a liquidity event, which means an exit to either some sort of a buyer, an IPO, a listing, right? Or, depending on how you think about it, some kind of trade sale where either you merge with another company, blah, blah, blah. So ultimately you sell IPO, right? What does that look like? Is your business, are you even building it clean enough? Your books need to clean, by the way, from day one. Is it clean enough where the equity is clear? I don't have random people that have random decision-making power over your business that could influence it to then be sold to a real buyer, right? And what does that look like? So having that vision to exit is the third thing I would say as a very important step. Which for a lifestyle business, this is where, going back to, is it suitable for me? Some people, maybe they don't want to sell the business, and that's fine. You want to do it for the rest of your life. And I think that's respectable as well. Small businesses built our economy and continue to do so in America. But I want to encourage today, all our listeners to think about, how can I be the next Airbnb, Uber, right? Or even solving the incredible problems that we're faced with today in climate, in health, in education, where women get disproportionately affected. And ask yourself, how am I uniquely positioned to solve this big problem? And what I was saying, I think this is important and probably why I'm here today, because when I reached out to you, I was like, well, let's see how this conversation goes. But I think this is where I want to drive it home. We can do hard things. We must challenge ourselves. The world is in a challenging place right now. And all of you are so skilled in so many different ways that men out there don't even understand. We run circles around them. Like, I've been in rooms where I see women just doing the damn thing, no excuses. Challenges, yes, people underestimate her, whatever, but she's still doing that damn thing. If we take all that power and solve the hard problems, not incremental problems that you and I like, I don't know, skincare, all these things, beauty, yes, I believe it's important. But challenge yourself to also create an impact that will change generations after you, because that is the kind of innovation that we need right now. And women have so much to offer.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Chen-Spellings on the Jasmine Star Show. It was an intention and a deep drive to have us connect, have you impact. And one of the things that I want to loop back to was that whatever cup we pick up, we can put down. And for us to add, to taste more salt. Is that what he said?
Yes, taste more salt.
Taste more salt.
Eat more salt.
May we eat more salt and put glasses down as we see, and may we challenge ourselves to solve big problems, because we have the capacity and the capability. How do people find you and go deeper with your relationship and with building a relationship with
Yes, thank you. Well, you can follow me on my socials, Sarah Chen Global. Beyond the Billion is the company name. And Billion Dollar Moves. Yes, Billion Dollar Moves podcast is actually where I get tactical. So I interview billionaires, unicorn founders and funders with this very reason, so that you don't have to guess. I've already done the work for you, and this started because I was already having these exact conversations on how do I fire my co-founder? What do I do after I exit? I had a $780 million exit and I don't know what to do with my life. Let's have more of these problems. Yeah. How do I create an impact? How do I, get to scale, because I'm stuck, right? Like, I'm stuck at these numbers. So I've already done that work. We've got Robert Herjavec. We had the co-founder of YouTube. We had Anjali Sood, really, really good women and men that are building. And that's part of my thesis of what we need to do. We need to normalize how success looks like. And it looks like you and I. And that's part of why I started Billion Dollar Moves, because there are great women doing great work, investing, building, innovating. And frankly, I didn't even see them in a lot of the VC podcasts that I was listening to. And I said, well, girl, you got to be the change. Walk the talk. Bring the women on your show that are doing the work. And we have a CEO series where we even go down to what were the strategies in their leadership. So everyone from Serena Williams that I met at Inbound to Lisa Su at AMD, right, with AI and all of that. So, give it your time, because it gets tactical, it gets technical, it gets hard, but behind everything that we see, that we enjoy, that's being built is a human behind it. So why not you? This is my question. Why not you, Jasmine?
Why-
What's next for you?
Why not me? Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Chen-Spellings. She came here to dispel any notion that we have that we are not enough, and that then challenged us that we can actually do even more. Connect with her online, connect with her on her podcast. Thank you for watching and listening to the Jasmine Star Show.